Good to see you
Hello.
both.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to episode 3 of Conversations With. And this time we're so excited. We are with our friend and colleague, Farrel Dobbins, who's our Veterans Affairs Coordinator here at SRJC and also our certifying official for our Veterans Benefits. So welcome, Farrel.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to hear more about your role here at SRJC and also your inspiring history and process and experience as a recipient of federal student aid as a student. So I wonder if you could first just share with us about your role here now?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the coordinator for the Veterans Program at the junior college, and essentially what that means is I coordinate services for student veterans, for the family members. I run the VRC, which is the Veterans Resource Center. And
so nice. So beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of fun. It's a nice space. And then I report enrollment for students that are using VA education benefits. So because that's a federal program, much like financial aid, it kind of has to be monitored and administered.
It's a lot. It's a big program.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also I know, Farrel, you're also so humble. You really make the time for your students. And I know that, I see that. And you also have a personal connection with our student veterans. Can you share about that right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband served about 13, 14 years in the Army Infantry, and he's a retired veteran. He's a disabled veteran. And so, you know, being married to someone that served and watching kind of the progression of transition from service to civilian life and pursuing education, it really just informs the work that I do. It helps me keep perspective. He gives me like a great sounding board to go to when I have ideas or concerns, because he brings that background that I'm able to glean from.
That's so awesome. That's amazing.
Thank you for both, for his service and for yours. I know as a partner, it's also a significant thing to bear to do that also. That's really commendable.
Thank you.
So we're in this in our show, one of our main goals is being able to really just talk about the individual experience of financial aid, and not only ultimately what it brings a student, their successes, but also some of the challenges. And we acknowledge in our field that it's just unfortunately not always easy. It is our intention and our job and our commitment to try to make it as easy as possible for our students, but before we get to all of the good stuff, sometimes we have to talk about the challenges. So I'm wondering if you would share about the challenges that you might have faced, or also kind of what helped bring you to this point.
Yeah, totally. So I came actually to the junior college right out of high school, but I came from a family where no one was college educated. Both of my parents just had high school diplomas, and so they didn't have that familiarity with really anything to do with the college setting. And so to try to say to your parents, there's this application, it's called FAFSA, and I'm going to need your social security number and your income. My parents were like, what is this?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? There just wasn't they just didn't know. They were distrustful of it. And so really, this is a testament to how much financial aid has evolved over the years since that, period in time, because back then I could say it was a lot more transactional. There wasn't as much connection, but what I see now is financial aid is really growing in this desire to connect with students and break down the barriers and make it accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
Not just students whose parents have a college background, but also all of our students that would be, the first person in their family to go to college. But at that time, that was a huge barrier for me, was because basically I just ended up paying for everything out of pocket myself. My parents didn't have the money to support that endeavor. I was working, and ultimately I ended up, discontinuing. I did not persist at that point in time.
Yeah, it gets very hard whenever you can't, like, you're trying to convince your parents, but then at the same time, if you don't have that support, for example, like somebody like another adult who's in the financial aid office kind of like explaining to the parents, it's trustworthy, things like that, which is, I think it's great because in a way right now, doing a lot of outreach, I feel like that's what's been helping us gain that trust from parents. So I like that how you mentioned that, we've been bringing down some barriers and hopefully getting more trust from the parents as well as the students to feel comfortable to ask their parents for that information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're reminding me that I think there are technically 18 of us in our whole department, because there's so many different moving parts in financial aid, and almost all of us are dedicated to hand-holding. We are committed to, trying to alleviate those stresses and those concerns because they are real. And you're right, there's a lot that's evolved since probably the time that you applied, between the application being, online and, all of the securities that the technology has provided, but still the nerves, the concerns are all, probably not very much different. And so it is our job to try to help and facilitate, and empower those, who are feeling that way. And remind them that once they do apply, there's extensive opportunities at SRJC, and particularly for our veterans, because they may also have, veterans benefits that they have signed up for. And so thank you for sharing that, Farrel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you eventually, you came back, back to school.
Yeah.
That took a lot of courage.
Yeah. So really, I think my story is maybe to some unique, but it's also like a lot of people out there. I was going through life. I had got married young, found myself going through a divorce. I had a young child. My son was about 2 at the time, maybe 3. And I was like, what am I going to do? I need to go back to school and finish my degree. And so obviously I found myself reconnecting with financial aid. By that point, I was an independent student, so I didn't have to rely on my parents for their information. And through that process, I became aware of this thing called federal work study. And I became a work study student in the financial aid department, which in hindsight, like in the moment, I couldn't see the value in it. But in hindsight was like the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was getting my financial aid. I was gaining work experience that would lead me, into better opportunities. And then I also was seeing the scholarship department at work because it was connected with financial aid, much like it is here. And I was able to, get my Pell Grant. I was the recipient of a scholarship that was set aside for single parents. And even the scholarship opportunity was so cool. If we received the scholarship, we had to be tasked with once a year giving a professional presentation to like the scholar donors and the other students that received the scholarship. And so, I had to like come out of my comfort zone and do these presentations, and we would hear from other single parents in the professional community that had gone to college and, followed that trajectory of success in spite of some of the challenges. So the difference in like my first experience with financial aid versus when I went back a little older, a little bit more knowledgeable, and then just having that connection with the department, night and day, my experience. And, I always tell people like financial aid changed the course that my life was on. If I hadn't have had access to that funding, I wouldn't be sitting here in this job. I wouldn't have found the success that I have found. I often feel like that work study job and the financial opportunity that it afforded me allowed me to set an example for my son of what it looks like to persist in spite of things being stacked against you. So I'm a believer.
Yeah. And now your son's going to be feeling comfortable and even being like, hey, mom, I need your help with this. And you're going to be able to help him fill out or do whatever it takes for him to be able to succeed.
Right.
That's so awesome.
You gave me goosebumps and glassy eyes. Really. Yeah. It's an inspiring story, Farrel, and it's important. When it's very personal, I know, but to be able to share it is so important because you're helping anyone listening to just you're normalizing the experience, and our message is that we are a community, and we are, I said it before, we're committed to serving our students and embracing their successes. And I commend you, and I wish that I wish that your services and your experiences could have been better, but it's clear that it really molded you into the inspiring person that you are now.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think, life just hands you things, and sometimes you have to scramble to figure out what you're going to do with it all.
Yeah.
The important thing is that you reach out and you ask the important questions. We don't know what we don't know, so when we don't know, we've got to connect and reach out. And my secondary experience with financial aid really taught me that. There was so many barriers that I ran into when I went back to college, and what I really learned through that experience was just reach out, ask the questions, ask, what am I missing? Is there anything else I can do? And I mean, that's really what I took away from that time in my life. It was a difficult time, and some days I felt like I was barely going to survive it, but ultimately I got through, and I walked away with this wealth of experiences that now I can pour those into students that come through my doors. In the Veterans Office, almost all of our students are non-traditional students. And so I'm able to connect on that level of like, man, I totally know what it feels like to show up at a college campus and be a full-grown adult, have kids, have all these other life commitments, and still be trying to figure out what it looks like to go to school, and how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay your bills? So I'm grateful for the experience. Like I said, hindsight's 2020. Back then, I probably didn't have that perspective, but now I definitely do. And it's in many ways brought me to where I am today.
Yeah, we definitely live and we learn. And I think it always goes back. I feel like in every episode, we always say this, that the biggest thing is always asking questions. No questions is no answers, but if you have a question, we're always gonna find an answer. And if I don't know it, I know I can reach out to anybody in our department and somebody will know it. So it's always nice to bring that back, and as a reminder to all of our students to please ask us questions. We are always available. We're still gonna have Zoom, even though summer's coming up and we're slowly transitioning back in person. But our Zoom hours are still available Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 12 and 2 to 4. That's not going to change. And our FAFSA application is still open. It's open all year round for the 2022-2023 applications. So please apply. And if you have any questions, please always feel free to contact us.
Yeah, this summer we are moving into, just as of next week, I think it is, early June, we're doing Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then we're moving to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. This is all campus wide. So we're excited and ready to see faces in person, or as Drina says, continued on Zoom, including your faces. I'm really excited to see both of you in real life.
I'm excited to spend more time with Farrel. I feel like I've never really met her. I mean, we've seen each other in person, but I'm still pretty new. So
yeah, we're awesome. Like two ships in the night.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be back on campus and to see all my coworkers, but I'm really excited to have students back in the VRC, and we're going to follow the same reopening schedule, that everyone else is. But it's just going to be so nice to have that life breathed back into campus, you know,
Yes.
and feel that community and that connection that we get by working at a community college.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, with that, thank you, Farrel, for your service.
Thank
and
you.
your partnership. Drina, thanks for your partnership. And
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. And here's to the next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.